It's day 40 and I've just been to the most amazing bake sale, and you'll never guess who ran the bake sale. Mrs. Claus. I don't think we've even talked about Mrs. Claus, but I spoke to her and she told me so many good stories, and I'm going to tell you one about the mystery of the bake sale. Mrs. Claus wasn't just a good cook. She was the best cook by far. She held a bake sale once a week where her jam roly-poly was the star. Those at the North Pole couldn't wait to taste her cakes. Catalina was always front of the queue, excited to see what she makes. That was until one Sunday morning when she entered the kitchen downstairs to find Maria the mouse tidying up a mess that certainly wasn't theirs. Cakes and cream was all over the place, as if a tornado had washed them away. Cream on the ceiling and only crumbs left on plates. There was going to be no bake sale today. When they finished and tidied up the room, Mrs. Claus slumped back in her chair. "Maria, what happened to our lovely cakes we made with such love and such care?" Maria shook her head. She didn't really know. "When Mr. Claus left to make the toys, I went back to my house, went straight to bed, slept until I heard a loud noise. I walked out of my cheese and this was the sight. Plates scattered all over the floor. No evidence of anyone making the mess, although there's still cream on the back door." Mrs. Claus looked over. She could see it there, about 1 foot off the ground. Now, given where they all lived, it was difficult to see if the culprit could ever be found. They hung a notice on the kitchen door there was going to be no bake sale today. Mrs. Claus and Maria the mouse set out to find out who ruined their buffet. They walked through the streets, passing the shops for signs of who it could be. Who came through their kitchen in such a rush and ruined everyone's tea? There were no clues to be found. The culprits had disappeared. But what happens if it is again, was the question they both feared. They would have to be more vigilant. Maybe lock the jam roly-poly away. Maybe even stop the bake sales altogether, as there was a lot of disappointment today. There was nothing they could do. They returned to Mrs. Claus's house, upset that the bake sale could be over. A sad Mrs. Claus and an even sadder little mouse. Until by the study door they spotted some cream, something they didn't see before. As they opened the door, snoring very loud, were the culprits asleep on the floor. Crumpet and Cracker were covered in cream. Crumbs led all the way to their beds. All over their paws and on their tails were jam roly-poly on their heads. Relief it was over with a smile on their faces, Mrs. Claus went to fetch the hose, washed the 2 dogs down in the backyard, from the tail right down to their nose. Crumpet and Cracker didn't like getting washed. It was really not their favourite pastime. So ever since then, the bake sale was on, and it always started on time. They're cheeky little dogs, Crumpet and Cracker. And there's a lot more stories I'm going to tell you about them later that I heard from Mrs. Claus herself, and the big man himself told me one as well. But I will tell you later. Okay, good night.